It's time now to go inside innovation, brought to you by Allegiant, pioneering safety. Well, podcasting with roots that date back to the 1980s really began to gain traction about 15 years ago. And here in Indianapolis, Drink Culture podcast has grown from just talking about beer and whiskey drinks to interviewing experts in a wide range of industries. Today, Drink Culture podcast proclaims to be the official podcast of Indianapolis, and co-founder and CEO Fabian Rodriguez is here to explain his new growth and his new podcast and the economic impact as well of podcasts. Fabian, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And congratulations, too, on the success of the podcast, which is really about, as we were talking off camera, being a place-based podcast. What's that all about?
Yeah, so we kind of had been working with somebody that pitched this term to us as place-based podcasting. We really never thought of ourselves in that way. So we've always been hyper-local, but never thought about anything beyond that. And when she put it in those terms, it really resonated with us, made a lot of sense. So it's just about engaging and inspiring people within your own community to go out there and explore everything that we have to offer. So
your podcast has really evolved, because I think you started in 2017, texted your co-founder, say, hey, you want to start a podcast about bourbons and drinks. It evolved from that, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. So Jared Bicyco is our other co-founder, and I just sent him a text message. I was really bored at work, just didn't like what I was doing there, and I needed something to scratch that creative itch. So I sent him a text and literally just said, do you want to start a podcast? And he said yes. Didn't know what it was going to be about, but he was really big into bourbon at the time. I was really into beer, and we thought, hey, maybe we could do something around that. And maybe 4 or 5 episodes in, we realized that we didn't know nearly enough to sustain an ongoing podcast, so we kind of had to pivot from there.
Well, talk about how you have evolved, and I was fortunate, honored to be on the podcast for one of the episodes, but talk about what the podcast really, you mentioned place-based podcast, but what it's all about now.
So really, if you're a podcast listener, 2 of the most popular podcasts out there, Joe Rogan Experience and How I Built This, and we really wanted to take an approach that combined those 2 worlds. So we're taking a look at the people that have helped build Indianapolis to what it is today. So we interview business owners, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, cool people that are doing just cool things around the city, and we try to highlight them in this long-form conversation.
Podcast, the growth trajectory for podcast is really pretty substantial, and you recently quit your day job, if you will. You're full-time now. Right?
Full-time podcasting, literally 24/7. I'm doing it all the time, but yeah, it's a huge market, and this is kind of having the boom that blogging did at one point, where everybody feels like they have to do it, and if you don't, you're missing out. But it's blown up.
As you look at the potential, what do you see as the future? What's next for the podcast?
So we've always had this grand vision to take it somewhere else, right? We think that we can brand this as something that we can place into other cities. And what we've seen over the last 2.5 years is that we are having some economic impact. We are having a lot more engagement with citizens in our community to really start to make a difference. And we think that it's unique enough that we can, take our process and how we've been able to build it into places like a Cincinnati or Louisville, Kentucky, something like that.
So you see some scale to this, and obviously you feel podcasts are here to stay.
1,000%, yes.
Very good. Good answer.
Yeah.
Fabian Rodriguez is co-founder and CEO of Drink Culture Podcast, an Indianapolis-based podcast that has continued to grow and has a lot of growth opportunity going forward. Fabian, as always, thanks for being on. We'll look forward to having you on again.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.